You studied hard, you built skills, you followed each and every piece of advice you were given. You worked harder than people around you. Yet, here you are wondering why the life you were promised was never quite handed to you. The problem isn't you. The problem is that the success formula we were handed was never quite as complete or as universal as it was made out to be. Today, we are going to talk about survivorship bias, the passion myth, the meritocracy illusion, and the psychological traps of hustle culture. Because understanding why the formula didn't work for you is the first step towards building something that does work for you. Let's start with the most uncomfortable truth. Every piece of success advice you ever received was built on a fundamental error. We studied people who were successful. We noticed what they did and told everyone to copy it. But we never studied the equally large, arguably larger group of people who did the exact same thing and never made it. That's not wisdom, that is survivorship bias. And almost every motivational book, every TEDx talk, every LinkedIn success story is based on that. Let's take the most popular piece of success advice we have ever been given. Follow your passion. It sounds beautiful, it feels right, but researcher Newport spent years trying to study people who genuinely love what they do, and his findings were counterintuitive. They didn't start with passion. Passion was simply a byproduct of the valuable skill sets and mastery over the skills that the person had built over years. After gaining autonomy over their work, passion was the result, not the starting point. So when we tell young people to follow their passion before they've built any real skills, we're not giving them wisdom, we're setting them up for frustration. And then there is the meritocracy myth, the idea that talent plus hard work equals success. And look, it's not entirely false, but it's also dangerously incomplete. Because the single greatest predictor of your economic success, more than your intelligence, more than your work ethic, more than your talent, is the economic circumstances you were born into. We don't like admitting this because it disrupts the story that entire societies have been built around, but ignoring it doesn't make it less true. It just makes us blame ourselves for outcomes that was significantly shaped by economic factors completely outside our command. And then comes the hustle culture, the glorification of working yourself to exhaustion as a proof of ambition. Here's the irony that nobody talks about. The more desperately you chase success, the less capable you become of achieving it. Psychologists call this ego depletion. The mental energy you spend obsessively tracking your progress towards a goal actively drains the cognitive resources you need to actually achieve that goal. Psychologists spent decades studying peak human performance and found it requires a paradoxical balance of effort and ease. Hustle culture destroys exactly that balance. We've built an entire culture that rewards the performance of hard work over the actual conditions that prove and provide results, right? Finally, and this is the most important point, that we were handed the wrong definition of success to begin with. Philosopher Alan Water calls it status anxiety. Our obsessive measurement of ourselves against metrics we never consciously chose. Your salary, your job title, your follower count, prestige. These were not your metrics. You inherited them from a system, from a culture, from an economic system, a family, and algorithm. So before you conclude that you are failing, ask yourself honestly, by whose definition? Because it is entirely possible to be failing spectacularly by inherited metrics while succeeding genuinely by the ones that actually matter to you. And that distinction between the life you were told to want and the life you actually want might be the most important question you ever seriously ask yourself, right? So this brings me to my final point. What's the takeaway? The takeaway is that it's not that the effort doesn't matter. It is not that you should stop trying, but that the formula you were handed was always incomplete. Success is messier, luckier, and more structural than anyone told you. Which means when things aren't working, it's not always because you're doing something wrong. Sometimes the formula itself was wrong. So define success on your own terms. Be honest about what you actually want and be kind to yourself in the gap between where you are and where you thought you'd be by now. That gap doesn't mean you failed, it just means you are figuring it out, like everyone else. I hope this video was useful and stay tuned for the next one.